Well, welcome back to the evening edition. I'm Carolyn Quinn, sitting in for Kate Borsay. And as you know, in a fortnight's time, we will hopefully know who has won the American election. Hopefully, maybe not by the Thursday night or the Friday, but pretty soon. Now is that time of the show where we get you up to date with all the twists and turns on the way to that big day with our election watchers. And tonight we are joined by Susan Platt, former Chief of Staff to Joe Biden. Hello to you, Susan.
Hello, Carolyn. Thank you for having me.
Hello. Erol Morkoc is a Chief Strategy for Republicans overseas. Hello to you, Erol.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Hello. Well, you're very welcome. And here with me in the studio, Scarlett Maguire, Director JL Polling, who is here and who can hopefully help with our guess at who's up, who's down. But look, let's have a little hear at, a little listen to what Kamala Harris has been saying. She spoke to journalists to push a fundamental issue on the agenda, and it's certainly been a key issue for the Democrats, the question of abortion rights, ahead of travelling to a rally in Atlanta.
The biggest issue that we have right now is that Donald Trump has stood in the way of what would have been a proven part of the solution to the bigger problem, which is that we have a broken immigration system in America and we need to fix it. And we have the tools at hand, but we have on the other side of this election Donald Trump, who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. I intend to fix the problem in a way that is just about practical solutions that are within our arm's reach if we have the commitment to do it.
Well, both the candidates have been hitting the swing states. Kamala Harris in Georgia alongside Bruce Springsteen, while Donald Trump has headed to Arizona and Nevada. Scarlett, from your point of view, how are the polls looking? We keep being told it's 50-50, but is anyone edging ahead?
Yeah, the polls are painfully tight. I suppose it sort of depends on what you mean. So in terms of popular vote, Harris is still just about sort of eking a lead, but actually that often in recent times hasn't been enough for the Democrat candidate. Anyway, it's incredibly tight. The swing state polls are all within the margin of error. We also, pollsters look at models as well. They have models to try and work out what's going. These tend to be aggregates rather than the sort of MRPs that we're used to talking about around time of the UK election, and actually are one of those. And most other pollsters are now showing, yes, a tight race, but one that is increasingly leaning in Trump's favour.
Well, let me then ask you about that, because Susan Platt, you see those polls. Presumably you'll say the only poll that matters is the one that happens on the election night, or at least in those votes that have been put through already. But is that a worrying thing for the Democrat team?
Well, Carolyn, obviously, once again, you're correct on that. I am at this point in the game, it's all about ground game and getting out your vote and trying to persuade those final few independents or Republicans to come your way. Kamala Harris has put together an unprecedented campaign in the last 90 plus days to tell us what she cares about her opportunity economy, about rights, about lowering costs. And she has the ability right now to reach out to Republicans because of the support of former Vice President Dick Cheney and his daughter, former Representative Liz Cheney, and now reach out about the safety and security of our democracy, given what General Kelly and General Milley have said about Donald Trump being a fascist. She has a ground game that exceeds anything I've seen in previous years, and basically nothing from the Trump campaign. She has the money. She has an incredible number of volunteer base. And I believe she has the message for our future of our country in turning the page and moving forward. So I think right now it's all about getting out the vote. And I think, they always the Republicans diminish the ability of women to go out and vote about their rights, about their bodies, as well as their pocketbooks. And I think that's one thing that made Trump this time.
Susan, you mentioned there Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly. He did cause a stir this week, telling the New York Times that his one-time boss, quotes, falls into the general definition of fascist, and that he, quotes, prefers the dictator approach to government. Kamala Harris has called Trump a fascist who wants unchecked powers. The Trump campaign have denied it and hit back. So, Erol, how is the Trump campaign matching those? What have they made of those allegations coming from somebody who was so close to Donald Trump? He was his chief of staff.
Well, two things. First off, I can't let it go that Dick Cheney is now a Democrat. I mean, did we make the greatest trade deal ever? We got Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., and you guys got the baby killer who killed all these people in the Middle East, like one of the most evil people, somebody who nobody who's voting for Donald Trump supports. Like Dick Cheney is the worst person in the world. And the idea that you think that there's some libertarian American person or somebody who's a Dick Cheney voter, I mean, that blows my mind. When I was a kid, Dick Cheney, and I used to be a Democrat, was the worst person you could ever have. Now,
well, I'm sure the Cheneys would respond to that if they could be here and that they could be in a place to respond.
Yeah, but
anyway, just so look, we're talking about what Kelly said and the words that have then been repeated by Kamala Harris.
And it's heartbreaking that's what the Democrat Party has decided to do 2 weeks before an election. John Kelly is a malcontent who was fired. Okay, he's a fired person. He wrote a book. People in the room have disqualified it. If I believed Donald Trump wanted Nazi generals, imagine, I want your listener to think about this. On one side of the party, they're saying that we support literally Hitler and we want Nazi generals in there based on some hearsay. Now, if me and my friends and the people voting for Donald Trump actually thought that, we would never vote for him. So that's like the craziest thing ever, that before the election, imagine this. Donald Trump was elected president, then for 4 years wasn't a fascist, wasn't Hitler, didn't weaponize the army with a bunch of Nazis, then allowed a free and fair election to go on, removed from power, spent 4 years only to come back to then in the second round become Hitler. It's too stupid to justify or respect it, because that is so insulting and offensive to say.
Erol, let me just ask you though, I mean, are you absolutely confident that Donald Trump didn't say something along those lines? I mean, maybe, okay, so you absolutely deny it. And
I don't think Donald Trump said he wants Nazis to be his generals. This is bizarro world.
That's not the actual quote, but look, this is he said, she said, and Kelly says that these were the quotes that he heard, and the Trump campaigner.
In the room said he didn't say that, right?
Okay.
But that happened, right? To your viewers, please. Other people in the room have said he did not say that.
All right, and Donald Trump has responded by calling Kamala Harris a stone cold loser who is wholly unfit for office. And of course, the Democrats would challenge that, wouldn't they?
That's a lot different than calling someone Hitler and a Nazi. We actually think she's a stone cold loser, just like Donald Trump called Sadiq Khan a stone cold loser.
All right.
The difference is we didn't call her Hitler, and we didn't say she wants to have Nazis in her government.
Susan Platt,
that's not professional. That's not professional.
Okay, Susan Platt.
Well, Kamala Harris hasn't said she wants generals like Germany had, like Hitler had. I'll say that. And let me just say this. It's really kind of sad or depressing, whatever the word is you want to use, that Donald Trump has so many of these good Americans bamboozled. So they just don't believe what they see. They don't believe what they hear. They only believe what Donald Trump tells them and no one else. John Kelly is such an American hero. He has been, what they're doing to him now is just a disaster. It's just a shame. The man lost his son in combat. No one doubts John Kelly's veracity.
Okay, well, look, Scarlett Maguire, you look at the polls, you look at how these things go down. The Harris campaign started off as talking about joy and change. And now people say, well, why have they resorted to name calling? Is this because we're in the final straight? You know, we are in those crucial final weeks of the election.
Things do tend to get nasty in the final weeks of the election. I doubt whether this was always their plan to finish on this message, though. For me, it tells me that, well, at least it looks from the outside, it looks like they're a bit worried. And they're a bit worried that the momentum that she first had, which was undeniable when she first took over the ticket, was moving away from her and things were starting to move towards Trump. So to me, it looks a bit panicky. I mean, as far as I can see it, and especially talking, just by the way, we were doing a focus group of swing voters in Pennsylvania last night. Sadly, I was not there, but I did watch the feed this morning. And this issue didn't come up once. The revelations about these comments, nobody brought it up. So, despite the sort of contentions as to whether or not they're true, at the moment, not a representative group, just a single focus group, but it was not on everyone's mind, which I think is worth flagging.
What were the things that were on their minds?
Predominantly the economy. And it's worth bearing in mind as well that these voters are undecided, so there wasn't a lot of love for either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. But I think this brings us back to that sort of point you were talking about just now, about the message of joy and change changing into one of sort of, oh no, but look, you don't want him over there, he's scary, he's fascist, he's whatever. And I think this is part of the problem. I think that the joy and change was tapping into what voters want. Voters are desperate for some optimism, voters are desperate for some change, but they do not feel, a lot of them do not feel like Kamala Harris provided enough of a coherent platform to show what that change was going to be like, how she was going to be changed, how she was going to be different from the sort of unpopular administration that she was taking over, which is, I think, why we're in the place that we're in now. And again, that's exactly what these voters were saying last night.
Susan Platt, a third of Americans apparently believe a civil war is possible after the election. That, of course, is a fear stoked up by what happened on January the 6th of 2021. Do you get the feeling that some Americans are already thinking about what happens when one or t'other wins?
Well, I certainly hope we're not heading in that direction. I think it's time we start reevaluating who we are and what we want to be and the democracy we were founded on. I do think the folks that Sarah's been talking to, when they say at this point in the ballgame that they don't know who they're going to vote for yet, I think more often than not, they're not going to vote at all.
Well, and yes, and actually I would like to pick up on that, because I do think that part of the problem that Kamala Harris might have is that I think her voters, even though she caught up hugely in the polls relative to where Biden was when he dropped out, we are seeing an enthusiasm gap. And we are particularly seeing that with young voters. We're actually, interestingly, particularly seeing it over the issue with Gaza, and not just within communities you might expect it from, not just with Arab American communities, but with sort of white Democrat voters as well. And that's what these people were saying last night. A lot of them said, well, I would vote probably for Harris over Trump, but I just don't think I'm going to vote at all. And I would say that's a problem for her.
Okay. Erol, just to come back to this question of what happens after the election, do you think there could be a civil war breaking out? Does it suggest that whatever happens, whichever way the election goes, the country will be divided? It's been a very divisive campaign, hasn't it?
Certainly been divisive, but as a historian, I would have to point out that civil wars don't start between angry citizens who start skirmishes. Civil wars start in legislature. So the idea of a civil war is something along the lines of this country is so divided, the election is so sketchy that there's actual attempts from legislatures to secede from the United States of America. And that is not going to happen. Now, there's been there's been movies made on Netflix, right, in the last years, Civil War movies about the breakdown of America. It's in the cultural lexicon. But the idea that Americans are going to take up arms against each other, I would just like to point out that for 12 of the last 16 years, we've lived in a Democrat-controlled country. And if you consider that the baby killer Dick Cheney is now on the Democrat side, 20 of the last 24 years, we've lived under basically that oligarchy.
I don't think it helps the name calling.
Well, that's what he is, and he should be called that because he's an awful person.
All right.
Now,
Well,
the people on my side of the aisle are not going to start a civil war. There's not any threats of violence from our side.
Well,
the political violence is actually coming against our president, and everybody has seen it with the 2 assassination attempts.
Erol, can I just remind you, though, what happened on January the 6th and the fact that Donald Trump argued that the election was rigged, that he was robbed. He encouraged people to march on the Capitol. He pointed people towards the Capitol and told them to fight like hell. Now, there are different interpretations of that, and I accept that. And I know that you believe that it was the right thing to do. But nevertheless, doesn't it show that there is an anger, a simmering anger there, and that if people don't get the candidate that they want, there could be a dangerous form of uprising, at least, if not civil war?
No, I think that's incredibly dramatic to think that a few bad apples who charged into the Capitol and smashed windows and took over that event don't represent the 95% of people there who innocently walked over there to protest and make their voices heard. I agree that there's simmering tension. I agree that there's underlying violence.
People
Remember
died
in the
that night,
2016
didn't they?
campaign, Donald Trump's campaign offices were firebombed. We had the congressmen who were shot in 2016. We've had 2 attempts on President Trump's life. So the last thing we want is to have violence. But the idea that what happened on January 6th is indicative of a civil war, I think, is incorrect. And I don't think that's where the country is going at all.
All right, but just to add, there were deaths that night. There was a police
Ashley
officer
Babbitt was killed. The American veteran Ashley Babbitt was shot in the head. Correct.
Yes. So just to go back to you, Susan, we've had some stories this week about election interference. There are two sides to this, really. There's the story about Labour officials from the Labour Party here in the UK going over there to the Democratic National Convention. Obviously, there have been questions raised about it, but does it help to have campaigners coming in from other countries? And have they been manning the phones? Have you come across any of these English or UK-based campaigners who are coming to help?
Well, I haven't. I've seen a whole lot of folks, but back when I was running campaigns myself, we had people from all different countries coming in the campaign. So it's nothing new. But I do have to go back to one thing. Somebody's calling Dick Cheney a baby killer. Let me remind people, if they vote for Donald Trump, they're voting for a criminal. For the first time in American history, this man has 90-some felony counts against him, and they're voting for a criminal. Do we really want to have that as the leader of the free world? I think not.
Okay, all right. Well, look, you've made your point about that in response to the comments from Erol. But what about this idea of interference from the outside? Do you think this could develop as a story? Is there being much attention paid to it over there?
I don't think it is. I mean, like I said, it's happened for years, going back in the last millennium when I was running campaigns. People have done this. We welcome people to come in and participate in the process to learn more about our democracy, and I don't think it's anything we have to worry about. Let them learn. Okay.
The other person that has been very prominent in the campaign is Elon Musk. Now, he has been told that his $1 million voter giveaway might be illegal. It'll be subject to questions. He's the richest man in the world. He's heavily backing Donald Trump, and he's been running a lottery for Americans who sign up to vote and then pledge to support the First and Second Amendment. Here is he explaining his giveaway.
We are going to be awarding $1 million to randomly to people who have signed the petition every day from now until the election.
Well, Erol Morkoc, what do you make of this? Do you think that there will be some sort of prosecution over this? Is it illegal to pay someone to register to vote? Well, it is, isn't it? But is it unclear if it's a lottery?
Well, it's a really unique situation because only somebody like Elon would have created such a legal kerfuffle. It's more of a sweepstakes, right? For example, you don't need to actually buy anything to participate. In pledging that you support the Constitution is just every American does that when you pledge allegiance. So it's a gray area. That's why they said it may be. It doesn't look good for the Democrats to conduct any more lawfare this close to the election. That's neither here nor there. We want Elon Musk involved. He's our greatest immigrant. He's our greatest innovator. He's somebody who we hope gets in the administration and helps work to cut federal overexpenditure. Imagine $500 billion added to the deficit the last 2 weeks. Every American is on the hook for $106,000 for the total U.S. deficit. We need somebody like Elon in there. If he's making a mistake here fiduciary-wise, I'm sure he will ameliorate it. But I think a good-hearted man who's trying to give his own money away to random people via sweepstake, very different. In the lottery, you buy a ticket, just to be very clear. In this case, there's no qualification other than I like America and I support the Constitution.
We will come back and talk about that a little bit later. Let's just take a short break now. You're listening to the Evening Edition with Carolyn Quinn sitting in for Kate Borsay. And we will be hearing more from our US election watchers. Continue that conversation about Elon Musk and his multi-dollar giveaway. Also, what it means to have celebrity backers. That's next on Times Radio.
The Money Moment on Times Radio, sponsored by Coventry Building Society. Tips and tricks to help you save for the most for your sunny days. Find out more at thecoventry.co.uk.
The Story, the award-winning daily news.
Innocent people, framed. Covers stories that shine an astonishing light on many in hardback, ebook, and audio.
Are you being kept in the dark when it comes to your percentage fees? This means you could pay more. A Which recommended SIP for the...
What does that mean? That he was comfortable, he was pain-free, he felt safe to have that, to know that's...
Including a gift in your will to Marie Curie. Get your free will guide today. Search Marie Curie Will Talk.
The Evening Edition on Times Radio.
Yes, it's Carolyn Quinn sitting in for Kate Borsay. There is a fantastic offer on subscriptions to The Times at the moment. You can get your first 3 months for only £1. Yes, that is just £1. To get the offer, head to the Times website, but do be quick because the offer ends next week. So in order to get your Times for £1, get to the Times website. Now, let's pick up again with Susan Platt, former Chief of Staff to Joe Biden, Erol Morkoc, Chief Strategist for Republicans overseas, and Scarlett Maguire, Director at JL Polling. Erol, you have got our listeners really going. Can I put a question to you from one of our listeners called Frank? And please keep it short, only because we're running out of time. But Frank says, please ask the Republican on your panel, do you accept that Donald Trump is a convicted felon, yes or no?
I accept that in a rigged court of Manhattan, they were able to get a judgment against him. I would say this, I would rather have a convicted felon than Kamala Harris be president.
All right. Well, you've answered Frank's question. And Alan also says you can't say to Kamala Harris that about or criticise her for name calling when Donald Trump's main ammunition is to give people nicknames like Sleepy Joe Biden. So what do you say to that?
I suppose all's fair in love and war. Welcome to the campaign.
Right. Well, now then, Susan, just to come back to you, Elon Musk. Now, Errol, your fellow panellist, I'm sure you'll have some decent conversations once the election's over. But he gives the impression that Elon Musk is quite a harmless help to the Trump campaign. How do you view the Elon Musk intervention?
Well, I'm not sure what he's doing to help Donald Trump, to be honest with you. He's supposed to be kind of in charge of the ground game, and I haven't seen any of that anywhere. And let me be honest with you, I'd much rather have Bruce Springsteen and Beyonce and Taylor Swift than Elon Musk any day.
Well, you've got those, haven't you? You had Bruce Springsteen and Barack Obama out today.
Absolutely.
But do the celebrity backers really help?
Oh, I don't think so, but I think they help motivate some people who weren't sure they were going to go and vote that day or the next day. And she's or he's for them. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And that's all it is. Creates the momentum and the excitement and gives people one more reason to go out and vote. And that's what we want to do. Scarlett, do you think the polls show whether celebrity backing matters? I mean, was there a real shifting of the dial, for instance, when big name celebrities have got involved?
No, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. It was, in a way, it was a shame Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris the night of that presidential debate, because it was hard to untangle anything that was happening in the polls off the back of Kamala's good performance against Trump that night, because that was definitely when she was sort of at the peak. The week following that was when she was at the peak of her polling. So it's a bit of a shame we couldn't untangle that to see if Taylor Swift was part of that. My instinct is not they don't tend to have much of an effect.
And what do you think then, Errol? Do you think that they can have an impact?
I mean, they can have an impact slightly, I think. I mean, like you was just said, maybe some random person goes out because they weren't even going to vote and they're really a big Bruce Springsteen fan. But for the most part, I don't think so. In some ways, it hurts her, right? To moderates or undecided people who are leaning Trump, they see her go out there with more celebrities. And by the way, those celebrities aren't exactly people who Republican voters or our voters look up to. They're people on their side look up to. So I think it would help them galvanize their base. But as far as winning an election, if it won elections, Hillary Clinton would have been president for the last 8 years.
Can I just finish off by asking you all how you think that the next couple of weeks, I mean, it's a fortnight now, isn't it, of absolutely frantic campaigning. Do you think that the gap will open up again between the two candidates, Errol, or do you think it will be as tight as this right up to the wire?
I think there's a slight gap opening up. I hate to say that, knock on wood, as I'm doing it, but we're kind of slated for what we're thinking of as a narrow landslide. We feel that we will win a commanding electoral college victory by a narrow margin in each one of the swing states. So it's a double-edged sword and one we intend to wield to victory.
Susan Platt?
I heard the same thing coming from Republican talking heads in 2022.
So basically, you just don't think that that's going to happen.
And there was going to be a big, huge red wave. Didn't that the ground game and the money is really starting to pay off for Kamala Harris. And I do think it's going to be maybe a little bit a bigger margin than people think it will be.
Are there any more big interviews planned, Susan, that Kamala can show herself off in, just in a few words?
Well, I'm looking forward to going to her gathering next Tuesday at the Ellipse of the White House. That may start a whole new round of interviews and set the stage for the end of the election.
Thank you very much, Susan Platt, Erol Morkoc and Scarlett McGuire. Coming up, we'll talk Keir Starmer's reparation